May 25th, 1977 saw the release of George Lucas's Star Wars, which quickly became a surprise blockbuster hit. Often regarded as one of the greatest and most influential movies ever made, it helped change the way movies were made and captured the imagination of a generation. Star Wars quickly became a pop culture phenomenon. Over the course of this series, I will be joined by a number of Star Wars fans from across YouTube and the toy collecting community, as we take a look back at their earliest memories of Star Wars and find out what made Star Wars great. Hello Toy Collector fans, Universal Toy Collector here, and welcome to the channel. And welcome to episode 14 of What Made Star Wars Great, the series where I get to chat to like-minded people across YouTube and the toy collecting communities about their earliest memories of Star Wars, and to basically find out what made Star Wars great. Joining me this week is someone totally new to the channel. It's a pleasure to welcome young Jack, also known as Jedi Master 98. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello, sir. Very kind of you to allow me on this episode. Thrilled to be here and looking forward to what we're going to discuss about Star Wars.
It's an absolute pleasure having you on. So myself and Jack, we met at the recent MCM, didn't we, back at the end of October? So it's the first time we got chatting to each other. Jack's a big lover of Star Wars, hence the reason he's on this episode. So, Jack, the reason I'm doing this is because, unfortunately, there is a lot of divide within Star Wars, a lot of negativity. How do you feel about that negativity? Do you feel it's just?
I think in terms of negativity, I think everyone's obviously entitled to have an opinion on
Absolutely, yeah.
their Star Wars and everything. But I think when it gets personal, that's where the line's drawn. Like, I know there's aspects in Star Wars where, say, for instance, myself, there's some aspects of it where I don't particularly like it, but I'm not going to have a moan or a groan on social media and insult the actor or stuff going on. It happens. It's like with life. There's stuff in life which is like that. But I can understand the divide and everything, but what you've got to take into account and everything is this franchise is so beloved and so loved by so many fans from different generations of Star Wars, whether it be the original three, the other three that came out in terms of the era I grew up with, obviously the prequel or the sequel trilogy that's come out. But yeah, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I can understand the friction and stuff going on and everything, but the way I see it is we're in such a period of time where we've been, let's face it, we've been sport rotten. 2015, when The Force Awakens came out, we got that. And then ever since then, we've guaranteed nearly new bits of content, mainly yearly, maybe the one-off here and there. But I just feel that I can understand the divide and everything, but I just feel in some aspects of it, just be grateful to what you've got. Yes, it may not be your cup of tea and everything, but just the way I look at it is I'm like an open book. I'm here for the ride. If I don't like it, I hold my hands up. I don't like it, but I'm not going to have a moan and groan on social media if it gets personal. That's the issue I have. But I can understand the divide and everything. But people got to seem to remember as well that people know how much this franchise is dedicated to so many fans around the world. But I just feel that some of the decisions they've made in recent years in terms of the sequel era, I think maybe taking the extra year. So where you see the original three, 77, 80, 83. So it's like a 3-year gap. Whereas you look at the year I grew up with, the prequel era, 99, 2000, 05. It was that 3-year period. Whereas you look at the sequel trilogy, it was 2015, 2017, 2019. I think if they had just taken maybe an extra year in between as such to maybe get it right or maybe have a second thought, and some people could argue maybe actually have a clear idea from the beginning in terms of sort of going, oh, we'll have that idea, but we'll change that, or we'll keep with that, and then we'll change it again. Just try and stick with your guns, if you know what I mean. But I can understand the divide and everything when people are frustrated. But the thing I just have an issue is obviously when it gets personal and people who are in a, let's say, a privileged position to be in Star Wars, but it is what it is. But that's the thing.
That's the thing that gets me is the abuse that's getting shouted out. I mean, look, it's from both sides of the fence. So you get those that are predominantly racist, which isn't great, and I don't condone that or don't encourage that at all. But I feel a lot of people, like you've said it just a minute ago, people are entitled to their opinion, and there's, we go into the Acolyte, and that's what I want to talk about at this moment in time as an example. There were a lot of people that didn't like the Acolyte for very valid reasons. It wasn't great acting. It wasn't a great story. The overall production wasn't great. And I think, people are paying a subscription to see this. It's nearly 300 million that production's cost. And the way that Lucasfilm or certain people within the Acolyte had gone on about it and what they led with, that put a lot of people's backs up. It shouldn't be about gender identity or if there's a female lead or the force is female. We've said on this series many a time, Star Wars is for everybody. It shouldn't be singled out to certain demographics. That's wrong, because then what you're doing is, and I understand you've got to get new fandom in, but let's not piss the older generation off. And because people didn't like it for valid reasons, you get Lucasfilm coming out, Kathleen Kennedy saying that it's toxic male fans. You get Leslie Headland having her say. You even get Amanda Stenberg coming out and having her say. That is totally unprofessional. Yes, there are people that are predominantly racist. And like I said, that is wrong. If it's you, pack it in. It's not great. But on the whole, everybody has been branded a bigot or a racist because they don't like it because the female actor's black. That's absolute nonsense. So you get rational fans, and it's a lot of the rational fans that are the ones that are getting branded as racist, and the racists are the minority. And that's what really gets my back up, and that's the reason why I wanted to do this series, is because there are a lot of people out there, the older generation like myself, who've grown up with Star Wars for 40 odd years. We don't mind change. We get that. We understand that you need to bring new people in, but don't sacrifice the story, the storytelling, the character development to push a personal agenda to attract a new demographic, because that's not right. That's not right at all. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that, because you're a younger generation of Star Wars fan.
Yeah, so I think in terms of what you mentioned there, young, old, stuff changes. It's like history, whether it be, say, stuff from the late 70s to the early 80s to the late 90s, early noughties. The Star Wars changed. I'll give you my example, the prequel era. I grew up watching the prequel era. I loved everything about the prequel era. There's elements of the original trilogy fandom that didn't like some of it, but I get it. It's not their styles and everything, but yeah, it happens and everything. Changes happens. It can be good. It can be bad. It happens. But you mentioned in terms of the racist side and everything. For me, they're not Star Wars fans. They're just bigots who are just completely up their own arses, don't care about anything. But we need to just ignore them, forget it. As you said, Star Wars is for everyone, bringing everyone in. And for instance, your generation, obviously Lando Calrissian, Billy D. Williams, he was such a cool, interesting character.
He was
from that era of Star Wars. But for me, color plays no role. He's a character. I see everyone as equal. He used to own the Millennium Falcon. He's in Han Solo's outfit towards the end of Empire. He's blowing up the Death Star alongside Nien Nunb and Wedge Antilles and the rest of the rebels and Admiral Akbar. Regardless of that, that's pretty cool. But I don't know. It's just, I can, as you said, change happens for a reason. I can understand it and everything, but I think in terms of how you've mentioned it and everything, I think the thing that I've got from it, and whether people do agree or disagree with it, I think the thing that does annoy some people who are not sort of the racist bigots and stuff is where change is forced upon. That's not really necessarily, but as you said, it's to meet a particular criteria, which I can understand. We've got to try and make everyone comfortable and everything. But I think when it's sort of like forced upon and sort of not needed, but they put it out there and then we're going, well, we didn't really need that, but why have you done it in the first place? But whether it's to please people, bums on seats, it is what it is. But you go back to the racism side and everything, and like I said, I grew up in the prequel and everything. You've got Sam Jackson. He's the second coolest Jedi to Yoda. As I said, he's the nuts. It's Sam Jackson, and he's got a purple lightsaber. Like I said, color just does not come into mind. He's a Jedi. He's the coolest, second coolest Jedi to Yoda. It's just like he's cool, and plus it's Sam Jackson as well, so it's even cooler. But it's just like, regardless, it's for everyone, as you said.
Absolutely. I mean, look, these actors in The Acolyte, it was how the story was written, it was how it was directed that let them down.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
better direction, better story, they might have
mm.
excelled. They might, you had so much potential within that, genre of Star Wars, so to
Yeah,
speak,
because it
that
was
time
a
setting.
whole, yeah, and it was a
Yeah,
whole new
yeah,
era of Star Wars
yeah,
we haven't really
yeah,
seen before. But
yeah, absolutely. So it
yeah,
could have been great, but I think the writing had let it down because it was poorly written. The directing was poor, and I think in my day, it used to be a case of get the best person in for the job. It's not
mm,
like that anymore, unfortunately, and that's such a
no,
shame. And the
no,
thing is, I feel just because you are a say like a from an ethnic background, or you're same sex relationship, gay,
mm,
lesbian, or anything like that, it doesn't mean to say that you aren't exempt from criticism. Because you
mm,
are. You wanna be, people wanna be treated exactly the same. So, look, valid, fair criticism, I don't think there's an issue. When it becomes personal, that's the issue. And maybe they
yeah,
did get some
I
personal
agree.
stuff, I don't know, but you can't target that at everybody, saying everybody said it. So people have got valid points, but they're also being targeted
Mm,
as racist. Well, you don't like it because she's black. No, that's not the case. She was
no,
poorly written.
yeah,
But the thing is, you can say the same for the sequels. Again, so much potential. We had new characters, we had new settings, we had, new planets and stuff like that.
mm,
And again, the writing let them down. It was all disjointed. The story let them down. Again, not their fault. They can only work with what they've got. I mean, you go back to the original trilogy, Star Wars wasn't, I mean, George Lucas wasn't the greatest director, as we've discussed, in
yes,
previous
we've
episodes,
seen that on the odd
but he was a
occasion.
great storyteller. He was a
Yes,
great
yeah, he
storyteller,
was.
and he could get his
Mm,
story across. And firstly and foremost and fundamentally, story and character development should come across first before anything else, because then everything else
without a
fits into
doubt,
place.
yes.
Absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely.
mm,
Enough about the negativity. Let's get on and find out what made Star Wars great. But firstly, the question I
mm.
want to ask you is, what were your earliest memories of Star Wars?
So my earliest memories of Star Wars was obviously back in the day, early 2000s, around about 2002, 2003, maybe 2004.
Yeah.
Um, obviously, I grew up watching the prequel trilogy. Obviously, I discovered Episode One and Episode Two on video, and then obviously
Yeah.
eventually DVD when that came out. It was discovered because I had friends at school who were fans of Star Wars. And on the occasion back then, I had a few odd figures from the Phantom Menace, the old 5 POA figures that they introduced
Yeah.
back then,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just drawn to it. Obviously, speaking about it in terms of friends at an early age, watching a whole new universe in front of you, and it was just something that was drawn upon. And obviously, for that period as well, figures came out, started sort of collecting the odd figure here and there, and certain characters I liked and everything from that particular
Yeah.
era. And it was just drawn upon. And obviously, by the time 2005 came out, I was obviously young at the time, but I was able to see Revenge of the Sith at the cinema, and obviously that was a
Well,
huge deal
okay.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
of the promotion and everything, and obviously even a little thing like the earliest members of Star Wars, we used to like reenact battle scenes from particular eras. So, like say the prequel era, we used to go around each other's houses, friends of ours, and like recreate certain battle scenes with figures. Or I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember this as well, but there was a particular time where the cereal brands used to put tiny little lightsabers in cereal packets, and you could like
Yeah.
collect different colours from certain eras. And we go, oh, I've got Mace Windu's one, or I've got
Yeah.
Obi-Wan's, Anakin, Yoda's, just sort of stuff like that. But it was sort of like mainly early stages of watching the films, action figures, and even elements of sort of playing the video games. I mean, I grew up with PS2. I played the Lego Star Wars games, whether it be the original trilogy or the prequel
How
trilogy.
cool were those games, by the way? I
And
just want to say, how
that,
cool were those Lego games?
exactly, even if you was to go back now and play it on
Yeah.
sort
Yeah.
of like a remastered version, or they sort of do the backward capability on certain consoles, go, it looks old enough, but it still checks out. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I currently at this moment in time still play Xbox, and I've got the latest Xbox, and they've done the backward capability of the original Battlefront games,
Oh
where
wow.
You had 1 and 2, and the
Yeah.
first one, it was just so hard to operate the clones or the droids or the rebels or the Empire. Was the second one, you could be a Jedi, you could be a Sith, you could be a bounty hunter, you could be a smuggler, and that was just the early stages that drew me into it more. And then the collecting decided to take off, and then obviously the films kicked in as well. And then the big memory I always remember was getting the new editions of Star Wars. So obviously they released the new editions in the silver box set with the iconic Star Wars logo with Luke holding his saber. And I remember getting them. And then obviously I discovered the original trilogy, blown away by that. And that's just how it took off. It was just elements of figures, films, and reenacting scenes with friends and everything. And that was just the memories that just took it off. And
quality.
here we are today with the collection bigger than ever. So
it really is refreshing to have.
That's the grateful thing.
It really is refreshing to have someone like your age on, because a lot of the people that I've spoken to on this series have been like grew up in the original trilogy era. So when you went to see Revenge of the Sith at the theater for the first time, what were your initial thoughts and reaction to that?
Well, I think the initial thought and reaction in terms of discovering obviously the prequel era and everything, obviously Anakin's fate. So obviously I didn't see the original 3, so I was unaware. But to see how Anakin's transformation from this Jedi who was very caring, very loving, and then just be operated by the puppet strings by Palpatine, get drawn to the dark side, Obi-Wan and Yoda and the rest of the Jedi trying to gain Anakin's trust, but they're not letting him in with the little bits of information. But it was just the whole outlook of it, obviously the special effects and everything. I mean, for me, the opening scene or the opening segment of Revenge of the Sith is my personal favourite of the opening of the 9 Star Wars films. I just love everything about it, with the battle droids, the arc fighters, the Jedi doing their own thing, the buzz droids. It was just you're on the edge of your seat from moment one, and then the way that the Jedi were treating Anakin, not telling the relative information, Palpatine pulling the strings, and just see this Jedi who was so well sort of nurtured as such to be, he is the chosen one, go from this good guy to the dark side, was just brilliant. And just I think the music as well with John Williams, the cinematography at the time, the lightsaber fighting, especially with the fighting where Palpatine fights the Jedi in his office, Kit Fisto, Sauce of Tin, Mace Windu, and Gun Kolark. I think that's his name. But it's just the whole cinematography, and Grievous as well. The opening scenes of you seeing him on a ship. It's just blown away by how the story was, because it was just, we knew from obviously watching the first 2 that the Clone Wars was in this period, but if from a point of view where I haven't seen the original at the time, from the other side, you're thinking, maybe this war is going to come to an end, which obviously it does, and then obviously it's transformed to the Empire. But it's just to see how the stages were, and obviously when you watch the film years later, but not at the time, just seeing how the Jedi lose their way. But it's just the whole experience of the unknown, from not knowing Anakin's fate, then eventually watching the original 3 and going, so that's how it happened. That's how the string rolled out. That's how the strings were pulled with Palpatine. So in a way, it's sort of like unknown, but I just think it was such a great experience. And the duel as well on Mustafar is obviously iconic, one of the most best
I mean,
Star Wars
I think the
duels.
music sets that off. The music sets that off, as well as Duel of Fates as well for the Phantom Menace. But John Williams is just an absolute legend.
Exactly, but you looking back at now by watching the film numerous times and everything. I think if you were from a period of time where you've seen the original 3 to going into the prequels, you go, well, this is how Anakin changes. Whereas from a person who was new to it, going in completely unknown, thinking, what's going to happen here? And then when you see it, you go, wow, that's heavy. But everything about Revenge of the Sith, I love and adore. I mean, I love all the prequel films, but Revenge of the Sith is my top tier. As you said, the music, fighting, it was so awesome.
you saying that, it was really weird because I always felt that Anakin was seduced a little bit too easy. I thought, well, that didn't take much, did it? But then you hit the
Mm,
nail on the head when you said, Palpatine, the puppet master, he was manipulating that whole
mm,
scenario from the very first film. I just
mm.
didn't see it straight away. And it's only
Yeah,
when I've watched it and stuff like that, and I've, sort of like appreciated it more and see it more. I was like,
yeah,
wow, that just,
yeah,
I mean, he was just absolutely incredible how Ian McDermott played that part, and Palpatine as a
mm,
character himself, I just think was immense.
mm,
But what really, really got me into really appreciating the prequel trilogy was the animated series, The Clone Wars, because the story arcs were so in depth. You had
yeah,
Dooku, there was more backstory to Dooku, there was more backstory with the clones and stuff like that.
yeah,
And I just loved that. And I mean, obviously, that was when you were still growing up, The Clone Wars.
yeah,
Did you ever watch any of
yeah.
that?
I went to the cinema back in, I think it was August 2008 when it came out. Obviously, I went with my
Wow,
dad and everything. And obviously, there's this new animated series, and I was just like, okay, that seems pretty cool, animated, because
yeah,
that was at the period of time where obviously you're getting a little bit older as such, so you're discovering more things. So, say for instance, around about that time as well, I had a Nintendo Wii, so I recently discovered at that period of time the first Force Unleashed game as well. So
yeah,
that sort of period of time, 2008 leading into 2009, for me was such a great era for Star Wars, because obviously you had the video games,
yeah,
the Clone Wars film coming out. But yeah, the Clone Wars film, yeah, blown away. I mean, the opening battle on Christophsis, where you've got
yeah,
Rex, you've got this new clone trooper called Rex. We go, oh, it's a new clone trooper, and we've got Cody, and then seeing other characters that we have been familiarized briefly in the prequel era, and then seeing, oh, there's other characters, there's more to it. This is how the early stages of the war after the Battle of Geonosis happened. And
yeah,
oh, Anakin has a Padawan, but it's never, but looking back at now, it's never mentioned in the
yeah,
films. But it's just bringing new light and bringing in a new generation of fans. But it was, like I said, it was awesome. And obviously what they went on to achieve as well, despite having a little break where they lost a contract with, I think it was Netflix, and it went away and it came back. But yeah, the Clone Wars film was super. And like I said, the characters you see,
yeah,
and as you said, the character development, not just in the film, but the series as well. I mean, the Sarge
yeah,
Ventress. I mean, I remember watching
yeah,
briefly
yeah.
the Tarkovsky series they had, where you saw
I mean, that
her
was
fighting
awesome.
Anakin on
Well,
Yavin
yeah, yeah,
4, and
yeah,
to see her, oh, she's maybe going to get a bigger role as such. And but yeah, the Clone Wars film was awesome. And like I said, the battle on Teth, where the clones are running low on ammunition and the rest of the gang are coming in and stuff going on and everything, it was super. And then obviously that it just opened the door. And when they had the weekly episodes, I think it was on Cartoon Network at the period of time, because
that's it.
obviously I
Yeah,
didn't have it on. We didn't have Sky at that period of time at home, but when I used to visit my grandparents and either say stay at the weekends or maybe say stay before school, there'd be a period of time where they would, the early stages of the Clone Wars series would be on the telly, so you'd like watch it, record it, and stuff
yeah,
like that. Some of them would be on repeat, but I'd never get bored of it because it's just what it is. And then as you get a bit older, you start to realise, the stories are getting better, the development are getting better. And yeah, the Clone Wars just hit the nail at the park. And to think, looking back at it now, that it was George Lucas's sort of like last throw of the dice, or
yeah,
last bit
yeah.
of
It was,
jigsaw to
yeah,
say, right, this is my send off. And the
yeah.
way it just led off was
Because we had
fantastic. But
Dave Filoni. I was going to say we had Dave Filoni very much involved in that, and we thought he was going to be the
yeah,
successor, the natural successor to George
yeah,
Lucas.
yeah,
I mean, he was
yeah,
involved a lot, and he had George Lucas there by his side and stuff. So when
yeah,
George Lucas eventually turned around and said, "Right, that's it, I'm done. I'm selling Star Wars. I'm no longer going to be part of Lucasfilm or Star Wars."
mm,
Disney bought it out. I mean, for you, was that it? I mean, when the Revenge of the Sith had finished, and we had the Clone Wars
yeah.
series, did you think we were going to be getting any more movies?
Uh, I didn't initially think movies in terms of the 6 that came out. I had a feeling, maybe we'd get, say, films from another particular time frame as such.
Yeah, yeah,
I felt at that time that maybe Star Wars would be in a better place as such as Disney's going to take over and everything, see what they're doing, everything. Looking back at it and remembering when it was sold, I did think that we would get films, but in terms of obviously looking, I mean, hindsight's a beautiful thing to see going into it from 2015 onwards up until present day to see what happened. I don't think people could predict how disappointing the new three were in terms of it. I mean, I don't know. It's just one of them ones where you think, oh, okay, we'll wait and see what happens. But I think in terms of looking back at it, people go, oh, it was a bad decision, everything. But then again, there's aspects of it where some of it works, some of it doesn't. But in terms of films, maybe in terms of a bit of improvement, in terms of the technology being used, let's say maybe better caliber of actor or better caliber of camera and people working on sets and animatronics and live action stuff in terms of maybe operating stuff. But I don't think people could predict how poorly the films would end up, or the sort of like, oh, is that what we got? Maybe a New Hope 2.0 or stuff being rushed or not a proper time frame with writing and good stuff going through, really.
What was refreshing for me was we had the original trilogy, which was, you know, a new way of filming things. You know, the special effects were state of the art at that time. It was, you know, 1977.
Unreal.
So you had real life sets, you had real life costumes. Then you got to an era where CGI had taken over, and as much as I can appreciate the prequels now, I felt that in certain aspects there was maybe too much CGI.
Yeah, but I can understand that from a perspective. Yes.
Yeah. So, but what I liked about the sequels was the fact that it did go back to that old tried and trusted and way of doing things, which was actual physical sets and stuff like that, which I thought was pretty cool, because it gives Star Wars a real lived-in look. You know, Jakku, I mean, it was the arsehole of nowhere, but at the end of the day, it looked like an alien planet with the sets and stuff like that. So I did appreciate that for what they did there. But fundamentally for me, I just feel that with the original trilogy and the prequels, all three films were written and thought out, and the story was there.
Yes.
I don't know what the hell. Well, I do. It was an absolute car crash, wasn't it? With the storytelling and stuff like that. You had not Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson, then back to J.J. Abrams again. And it was like they just threw it together and said, there you go, Star Wars. You know, and they look at it and think, yeah, you know, we really enjoyed doing it. Well, maybe you did. But I don't know. I just wondered because you're, you know, like I say, you're part of that younger generation. What did you feel on the sequels with the story and the whatnot?
Well, initially when the Force Awakens was announced and everything, obviously most fans were delighted, like, oh, we're going to get new Star Wars films and everything. And then it was announced that it's going to be continuing on from 1 to 6. So, we'll probably get 7, 8, 9. So, that's great and everything. But the thing I always remember was that I don't know if you can remember it, but it was that picture of all of them doing like a table read. I think it was sort of like in black and white, where you had all Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, all sort of the original three there, and obviously the other actors and actresses and the new generation coming in. And thought, right, let's see what's going to happen. But I'm not going to lie, The Force Awakens, in terms of seeing it, I liked it. I felt that it was a good sort of starting block in terms of the new era. Yes, some people go, oh, Starkiller Base, it's a base, it's bigger, but it's very similar to the Death Star. Oh, I didn't think about that. But I felt that I felt that The Force Awakens was sort of like a safe starting block, but not terrible, not awful. It was sort of down the middle. It was like a safe one, but it felt okay. But I think looking forward in terms of Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, as I said to you earlier on, I just felt maybe that extra year could have helped as such. Maybe having a right plan, making sure you're getting the best out of the characters. Because as much as, say, for instance, in The Last Jedi, Rose's character, the abuse that Kelly Marie Trey got was awful. But
Yeah.
I felt that
Yeah.
the dialogue she had, that could have been Finn's role in a larger role as such. Yes, we know he got injured from the final moments of Force Awakens, but actually see him progress, take up charge, try and establish himself as a resistance fighter as such. Maybe
Yeah. Yeah.
lead the rally with Poe, get everyone behind you as such. Where at this moment in time, the rebels are in the dark place with the evacuation and everything, and just stuff like that. But I just felt stuff was rushed, not really thought out, and I just feel maybe that extra year could have been necessary. But as you said, it was just thrown together, going, "Yep, yeah, all right. So we've got these characters. What should we do? Okay, so we'll do that part. Oh no,
Yeah.
we won't do that. Then we'll change that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And then we'll change it." They never had a clear perspective. Whereas I think if they settled down, thought it through, and say, "Oh,
Yeah.
we can do that, but maybe put that in the next film." Okay, put that to the side. But I don't think there was a right structure. I just felt that it was aspects of it where some of it was poorly written,
Yeah.
character development should have been better, and just the connection with fans. Maybe even do a poll to say, "Oh, what would you think of seeing?" Because obviously we know now that George Lucas had his plan of
Yeah.
having Darth Maul in 7, but he brought him to the Clone Wars. But maybe look
Yeah.
to George Lucas's plans, but they said, "Nah, no thanks, George. We'll do
No.
our own way." But I think that if they'd have maybe gone to George for advice and maybe some
Yeah.
helpful directions, saying, "Oh, we'd like to use your free, but could you be maybe on set to provide helpful tips or helpful dialogue or stuff like that?" Maybe sort of like seek the man who's know what he's doing and maybe get a perspective of what he's
Yeah.
trying to say, but try and input it the way he would like it. But they said, "No, two fingers to you, George. Out you go. We'll do our own." But I just felt that if they'd have gone that way, it
Yeah.
would have been better. But
Yeah. Absolutely.
even
mean,
looking back at it now, say for the Rise of Skywalker, the script they had, Duel of the Fates. Funny enough, I managed to find the script online and print it off. And the opening scene is just unreal in terms of like this big cruiser being taken over. I don't know if you've seen it as well, but you know some of the artwork where like you see Finn and Poe leading stormtroopers captured on Coruscant, Rey and Ren fighting on Coruscant,
no.
stuff like
No.
that. But there was stuff that was released where they had like episode 9 was meant to be called Duel of the Fates. Rey and Ren were meant to be fighting on Coruscant, sort of near the Jedi Temple. Finn and Poe would like lead a resistance of captured stormtroopers and fight against the First Order. I think Leia would eventually become a senator. It was sort of like stuff like that, but it never
Oh
got
wow.
published because
No.
they said,
No.
"Oh, we're going to scrap
I
it."
mean,
But I think if
what?
they'd gone down George's route, it may have been better. But
Well, you never
we'll
know,
never
do you?
know.
That's the thing. You never know. But what do you think as regards to fans? Because again, from a fan point of view, you had the original trilogy, then you had, you went back and did the prequels, and then the people of the original trilogy were going, "Wow, it's just, this isn't our Star Wars, this isn't our Star Wars." So then J.J. Abrams comes in and thinks, "Okay, let's make it more Star Wars," because they weren't happy with the prequels because it wasn't like the Star Wars that they grew up with. So
Yeah.
it went to, he did it. Basically, it was like a reboot of Star Wars, wasn't it? To be honest with you, very similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Force Awakens to Star Wars. And then people come out and go, "Oh, it's just a rip-off of Star Wars, wasn't it? It's just, a redo of Star Wars." So then fans are moaning about that. So then Rian Johnson comes in and goes, "Well, I'll tell you what, they're moaning about that. I'm going to take it in a completely different direction." And then the
Mm,
fans moaned about that as well. So when
yeah.
J.J. Abrams comes in to do the third part of it, he's like, "What the heck am I going to be doing here?" Because,
Yeah.
I like the
You
story, I
just
like
like the
the
old
stuff.
saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You're just flogging a dead horse. It's just like, we got you in.
yeah,
Try and save it for us, mate. Yeah, we'll do this, do that. Yeah, I just, even like that aspect, they had obviously problems with like people falling out and everything. But even what you said earlier, they
yeah,
just had like a direct perspective in terms of saying, right, maybe we get JJ for free, or we get Ryan for free, or stuff like that, or maybe come together. They never sort of set the standard high, or set the marker out. It
yeah,
was just,
yeah,
as you said, it was just like, "Oh, we've flung this together, try and save it." And it's just like, well, I ain't got much here to save. Oh, just save it anyway. It's just like, yeah, it was a mess. But as I said, the Last Jedi, there was elements. Oh, the sequel trilogy as a whole, there's elements of it I do like, and there's elements of it I don't like. But I just feel, like with you, I just feel that they should have taken more time in terms of what they're doing and have a clear idea instead of saying, right. Because the thing that made me laugh was when they released the Rise of Skywalker, and you get like the behind the scenes stuff and everything. They were saying that, oh, Palpatine, Rey, she was going to be a granddaughter of Obi-Wan. Oh, she's a granddaughter of Palpatine. Oh, she's a granddaughter of someone else. I'm thinking, what's going on? You should have that figured out prior to it. Start cutting, changing where you've got a script and saying, oh, I'm Obi-Wan's granddaughter today. And then the next day you go, I'm Palpatine's granddaughter. It's not helpful advice.
No,
you think you should set it from marker 1, marker 2, marker 3, marker 4. This is what we're doing. It is what it is. But it's just too much crop and change, and they never sort of learnt from it. And if they were to make more, they have to learn from it because it's vital.
Well,
because
you would like to think they would.
Massive.
You'd like to think they would learn from it, but well, we'll see. But not only did you have the sequel trilogy, you also had Rogue One, which I felt was very, very good. I really enjoyed that. That was very Star Wars. And then you had Solo as well, which I felt felt the backlash a little bit, because by the time Last Jedi come out, the people had seen that, the fallout from that, Solo didn't really stand much chance, because people are like, oh, I'm done with Star Wars.
I had that. I went to see Solo, and there was a couple of friends of mine who Star Wars fans are going, no, I'm not going to watch that. I'm just like, well, it's up to you, but I'd watch it. But it didn't help itself due to the backlash with the Last Jedi, because obviously Last Jedi came out in December 2017, and I think I can remember top of my head, Solo came out in May 2018, so it's obviously a couple of months after and everything. So it didn't. It was sort of like one where we'll try, but I don't think it's going to get much attraction due to what's going on. But
I mean, do you think there was too much Star Wars in a short period of time? They tried to push too much out, and it was a case of quantity over quality.
Looking back at it, I probably would agree with you. Do you know, I mentioned in terms of giving that extra year for the sequel trilogy, instead of going 2015, 2017, 2019. I think if they would maybe taken, like, say, a year off and maybe paused Solo for maybe a little bit later, or put that on hold. But I think maybe you could maybe I think there is an argument for too much. But then again, if you've got people in a position like that, you think, oh, we know what we're doing and everything, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's all going to go clockwork. But I don't know, mate. I think, for me, I think in that period of time when you say too much Star Wars, I think the thing that really saved Star Wars by the skin of its teeth and everything was 2019, the release of The Mandalorian. I think that was the thing that really saved it in that period, because it was getting pretty dark as such after from Last Jedi. And then when The Mandalorian came, it's going, oh, it's a Mandalorian gunslinger. He's basically the Clint Eastwood space cowboy. It's cool. I think that was the bit that sort of that saved it and sort of kept it going, to say, oh, do you know what, we're sick of what's going on, but this is completely different. And I think in terms of who they got on board, in terms of Dave Filoni, who we knew, and obviously Jon Favreau from starring in Solo, starring as the voice of Pre Vizsla in the Clone Wars. So it's just like, okay. And then when you hear them speak, and you go, they're the people who know what they're doing, because they are fans like us. The writing aspect has been fantastic so far, and they sort of steady the ship and they know what they're doing. Where some others are going, oh, I like Star Wars and everything, but I don't really have a clue on certain aspects of it and stuff like that. It's thinking, no, get the people in who know what they're doing and know the love from the fans and stuff like that. I think there is an argument for too much Star Wars, but I do think that The Mandalorian in a way sort of steadied the ship as such.
Yeah, I mean,
it was a completely
seasons 1 and 2, I thought, seasons 1 and 2, I thought absolutely fantastic. And so George Lucas, he wanted Star Wars to be like a space opera, space western sort of thing. So he kind of mixed the two together, which I thought he'd done fantastically well. I think Mandalorian, especially seasons 1 and 2, I think really captured that essence, because, like you say, the Mando was like some space cowboy. When they introduced Cad Bane, oh my God, why did they not introduce him earlier? Seasons 1 and 2, he was incredible. And then in the book of
Boba Fett, it was It was
Oh,
a,
yeah.
a
So you're saying
surprise to
that
be
when he, yeah. That's
yeah,
it.
it
Yeah.
was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. But it was just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because, I
this
thought he
is
was in a
cool.
Mandalorian season 2, wasn't he? With Boba Fett. Yeah. But again, that promised so much because you had the end of season 2, season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, where Luke and R2 come in, and that
Yeah,
scene was just incredible. And then you had the
yeah,
post credit where you had Boba Fett and Fennec Shan walking down into Jabba's palace, having it
yeah.
out with Bib Fortuna, and then
Hmm.
you see him sitting there, and then Book of Boba Fett coming soon, and you just think, oh my god, this is going
Yeah,
to be
this is
wow,
yeah,
wow, and
uh-huh.
then start getting excited. But then that was a bit of a damp squid, in my opinion. I mean, I think that was a wasted opportunity.
Yeah. There was, I think, yet again, there was elements of it where it was cool and everything, but I don't know. In terms of the Grogu thing, it was just like, oh yeah, that's cool. We're seeing Luke constructing the
Yeah,
early stages in a new temple and everything, but I don't think it was particularly needed. It sort of became the Boba Fett Mandalorian 2.0. It's like this is Fett's story and everything.
absolutely,
But
yeah,
I thought the episodes we got were cool, but maybe that could have been the benchmark for the early stages of maybe season 3
yeah,
or
yeah,
something else and everything. But
yeah.
I can't remember the top of my head and everything, but I think it was. I can't remember for sure, and there's probably a statement out there and everything, but I think it was sort of like Kathleen Kennedy or someone at the top poking their nose and saying, "Oh, we got to get Grogu in and everything," and I think they were sort of
It,
like forced upon to bring him in.
yeah.
It's just like bring him
Why?
in
They knew they were
later
doing.
instead of sort of
Yeah,
like straight away. But
yeah. Well, they knew they were doing
uh,
a season 3 of Mandalorian. Keep it till then,
yeah,
because
keep it till then.
those 2 episodes really devalued Boba Fett for
Yeah,
me. They
they
really
they
did.
they were good, but they were
Yeah,
for Mando's story.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's the point of, oh, Fett's here, and there'll be elements of it where you only see him maybe towards the end. If you're going, I thought this is Fett's story. I thought it was a perfect opportunity for the Book of Boba Fett to bring the likes of Boskin, who is
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
well-known villain
yeah.
in the Star Wars
I mean, they
universe,
had
to bring his
Trandoshans in it, didn't
character
they? They
in.
had Trandoshan characters in it.
Exactly. I mean, to
Yeah.
bring Chris Anton, this big hench Wookiee and everything from the
I
comics,
thought
yeah,
he
that's
looked
cool.
awesome. I thought he
He
looked
looks
awesome,
awesome, yeah. But I
but
just thought there was a missed opportunity as such where they could have had an element of
yeah,
Boss coming in or other bounty hunters everywhere. Maybe Dengar, maybe from one of the
yeah,
eye-catching moments from Empire where you see the bounty hunters and maybe bring a couple of them in and seeing how
that would have been
Fett's
awesome.
empire is going
Yeah,
to evolve or expand and everything. But it's just stuff where, as much as sort of I was grateful for it, it's just going, it's just I thought this was Fett's story and stuff, but
yeah.
yeah, that's sort of like
I
been a
mean,
little bit of a down point. But then again, yeah, as you said, a missed opportunity.
we're absolutely flying through this episode, so I've still got questions to ask you. So we're going to crack on. What is it
Go for
about
it, mate.
Star
Go for
Wars?
it.
Any of the Star Wars? What is it about any of the Star Wars that really stood out for you?
I think the thing that really stands out for Star Wars for me is the friendship and the family aspects of it. So, in terms of obviously the father and son relationship, and obviously the friendship with Anakin and Obi-Wan, I think people can relate to it in terms of, yes, there's some families and friends that can be divided and everything, but I think with a little bit
Yeah,
of magic and a little bit of togetherness, you can bring people together. And I think that's the beautiful thing about Star Wars, because the thing that's engulfed Star Wars for me personally is just the friendship and the family aspects of it. Because yes, there could be tensions brewing, yes, there could be stuff doing, but if you can sort of get together and redeem one another, you can lead to better things. And I think that was the beautiful thing about Star Wars, because
yeah,
it's you can relate to it as such. I mean, I know there's not, say, battle cruisers above your heads and planets getting invaded by battle droids and stuff like that, but you can relate to it because you can go, the family aspect is so strong,
yeah,
because there's brothers and sisters, fathers and sons, aunties and uncles, where we all've got it, but we can relate to it and we can go,
yeah,
that's why we love Star Wars, and that's why Luke is the Jedi we want to be, because he redeemed Vader. He was redeemed by his son. There is still
yeah,
goodness of him, which I think that can be relate to people, where you can be down in the dumps or be in a dark period, but you can see light at the end of the tunnel and redeem yourself to be that good person. And I just think that's just a standout thing for me as a fan, the family and friendship aspect side of it, because
Wow.
it
Okay.
brings
Yeah.
people together. That's a
Absolutely cool.
perspective of what I see of it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that's absolutely awesome. And to be fair, I've never kind of looked at it like that or that way, or no one's
Mm.
given an answer like that. So yeah, yeah, that was pretty cool. How important is story to you within the Star Wars universe?
I think it's very important because let's face it, if you don't have a story, you don't have a project. So I think that if you can lay the boundaries out in terms of storytelling, in terms of what your particular characters want to do, what your particular antagonist or villain as such, and everything, I think if you've got it laid out right and you can bring people together and film it on a particular perspective where you want to tell your story that way and people get it, it makes sense. But I think that storytelling is the fundamental aspect of what makes Star Wars great. If you can nail that part and you can get the right people to play the role, then you're laughing with good
Yeah.
people, good technology, good sound equipment, stuff like that. And I think it's vital because that's what makes stuff great, whether it be particular stuff in Star Wars or other iconic franchises as such. If you can get the right people on board and you can get the right person for the right job, then you're laughing. You can say, "Well, I'm glad I got that done." So I think it's the fundamental thing that really
Yeah.
starts you off from the little point at the bottom to being the biggest man in the world. Because as you said earlier on, George Lucas was the right man for the job because it was his story. It was something completely unheard of, and come up to what, nearly 45 plus years, nearly 50 years later, it still holds out. As I said to you earlier on before we pre-recorded, A New Hope was on the telly, and even though
Yeah.
that's released in 77, it still holds up well because the story is there. It's perfect. We know what to expect, even though we've seen the film maybe hundreds and hundreds of times. It's know what it follows. It sets the standard, and Star
Yeah.
Wars is the one that just, as much as films in that particular era of time were great, especially the science fiction world, it just blew up and took it
Yeah.
from there. So
Would
if
you
you can
would
get the
you say
right
the
people
same about
there,
the
it's
sequels,
all right.
Jack? Would you say the same about the sequels? Because you grew up, so the sequels were the sequels, bloody hell, sorry, the prequels rather, were your first experience of Star Wars. So
Yeah.
would you regard those in the same light as the original trilogy?
I can understand, obviously, from your generation as such, in
Yeah,
terms of
don't worry
people.
about our generation. I want to hear it from you, from your generation.
Okay, all right, okay. Another conversation for another time. um, I think so because in terms of obviously the era I grew up with, it was a new thing of Star Wars, obviously discovering. But
Yeah,
I just felt they got it right as such. I mean, in terms, the one thing that really stands out for me is the lightsaber fighting, because when you look back at it, the other films, the lightsabers are cool, but you're thinking, oh, what would the Jedi be like in their heyday? And to see the iconic
yeah,
fight scenes and everything, they were awesome. But I think they got it right because, as I said, it was a new era of Star Wars we didn't see before, and I just feel, especially from my perspective, obviously me loving Revenge of the Sith, that was the benchmark that really sold it, because it was the film where it was getting darker, unexpected events were happening, and I just felt it got George got it right. And obviously, from a perspective of
yeah.
me watching it, it was awesome. Like I said, the duel on Mustafar, the Grievous duel on Utapau, it was just so much going on, but they got it right from that period of time and that limited amount of time they had
Do you
to
know,
tell it. But
it's
yeah.
really interesting and refreshing hearing you say that, because a lot of the people that I've had on this series have been predominantly the older generation that grew up with the original trilogy. So to hear
Mm.
a fresh perspective of the prequels, I think it's really refreshing, and I really appreciate
Mm.
that. Thank you. That's why I wanted to know what your thoughts were and your opinions and how it affected you. Because a question that I'm going to ask you now is, with the guys from the original trilogy, it was such a massive influence on our life. It had a massive impact on us. You know, we got into the toys and the figures and the collecting and stuff like that. Star Wars was the be all and end all as far as I was concerned. And obviously that kind of Star Wars has had that impact on you as well, but from a different start point from the prequels. Do you feel that with the way the generations are today and the kids are today, Star Wars is having that profound impact as it did on you as a kid? I mean, and you'll you know, the prequels came after the original trilogy, so there's a, you know, 15 16-year gap between those two there. So
Well, I initially feel from my generation growing up, but like I said, as you mentioned, the Star Wars figures were unreal. I remember going to places in Toys R Us where it would be
yeah,
like a bucket load of, from like where I were, the Revenge of the Sith line was one of the best lines of figures I collected. I've still got most of them on my shelf now, but it was just the whole promotion of it where you could go into stalls and be engulfed by Star Wars stores, spend an absolute fortune on figures, and it just keep drawing you back in and in again and again. And I just think the selling part and the marketing aspect of it was so good. And I think the era as
yeah,
well, obviously the era I grew up with, the Revenge of the Sith just coming out, the Clone Wars figures coming out, they really did sell it, and you could go into stores and be reliable and go, I know I'm going to get that figure. Whereas I feel with the newer generation, as such as the sequel trilogy ones, there was a period of time where the toy promotion was good, but I just felt that just fell off the cliff when the Rise of Skywalker just got released, because obviously I'm at that time was obviously still collecting figures and everything, but we only got one wave of Rise of Skywalker figures, whereas
yeah,
other films we got a shed load of figures,
yeah,
and there was
yeah,
like a
yeah,
Midnight Madness at Toys R Us and everything. But towards the newer generation and towards the later stages of the Rise of Skywalker as such, I just felt that the market has unfortunately fallen off for the newer era of fans,
yeah,
because it's not the same as it was now, where they were releasing buckets loads of toys and everything. The market has, I think, has gotten smaller, but they're releasing figures now for myself, yourself as well, in terms of having it on the shelf, where sometimes with technology taking its place, the play aspect of it, that's the core memory. That's the memory I always remember, was like
yeah,
reenacting with figures, where you see kids these days where they maybe have a figure, but they rather play a Star Wars game instead and everything, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
fine. But I'd love the core memory of picking up action figures, reenacting scenes. But I just feel in recent times maybe they've sort of drawn away from it, because, as you said earlier on, change happens for a reason. But when it was back in the day, it was done right. Was now it's
yeah.
sort of losing its touch, which is a shame. But
Do
hey
you think
ho.
that's because there's so much more out there now for kids these days? They've seen the latest films, they've seen the special effects on the Marvel movies. You know, you've got all these different films that, you know, that they're interested in. You know, Harry Potter, for
Yeah,
example, and other films like, you know, the Terminator films now, and I guess Aliens to or Alien films to a certain degree.
yeah,
You know, whereas at the time when Star Wars was initially released, the original trilogy, there was, you know, there was Star Trek, but I mean, it wasn't as you know, it was big, but I mean, when Star Wars hit, that was it. It just blew everything else apart. You
yeah,
know, then
yeah.
we come back and we have the prequels and then the sequels, but in between that, there's so many other films and so much other stuff out there for kids to be involved with. You know,
Mm.
I'm sure back in your day, it was more about playing with action figures than what it was playing with games. I mean, you probably grew up in the era where the game systems started to improve and get better, and there was
Yeah,
more wanting for that. So
yep,
I
yep.
think, do you feel that that could be a possible aspect of as to why kids aren't really interested in the figures and Star Wars anymore, or it's some other reasons? I don't know.
I just feel it's just a whole marketing, because, as you said there, I grew up in the period where collecting Star Wars figures was massive, and even though I had my figures, I still had time for playing with my figures and reenacting stuff, but having times for the
Yeah,
game. But I just felt that it was it was so well marketed and it was so well done. They just seemed to get it right. And bearing in mind, social media wasn't the presence as it was today. So I think
yeah,
social
this is true.
media not
True.
being
Yeah,
really around, I think definitely had an aspect, because yes, now you can still have a childhood and everything, but it's not the same where you sort of social media free. You could
Yeah.
go round each other's houses or knock on doors and say, "Oh, do you want to reenact something today?" or do stuff like that, or have an action figure diorama and everything. I just feel that back then it was done right and marketing well, but now the kids these days are so well sport rotten, which is completely fine if you see it from that aspect, but you don't sort of really have that core memory. Like I've had memories where we go around each other's houses or we go to a park and we'd actually have the old lightsabers and recreate certain
Yeah,
scenes.
yeah,
You wouldn't
yeah.
get certain kids do that now. They look at you thinking, "Oh, you're what's going on there?" Was back then you did it. It was
It
normal
was,
because social
yeah,
media wasn't around and it was awesome. You were in your own world. But now there's cameras and videos taking place. Yes, it's cool now we can do it because Star Wars is popular than ever. But yeah, it's just I just
yeah,
felt that years ago they hit the ball where it needed to be struck. They marketed it
yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah, yeah.
and it was done to the standard where you could go, boom, you're going to make a decent living. Because let's face it, George Lucas doing that little merchandise percentage thing is one of the best things he's done because he's earned a fortune off me in
Yes, he's done
recent
all right,
years.
hasn't he?
So
He's done all
yeah,
right. That was a
that's a
stroke of genius.
bonus.
I'll give him that. I'll give him that. Moving on. How important do you think the older generation of Star Wars fans are to the Star Wars franchise? And what I'm going to do, sir, is include you in that because you were around for the prequel era. So you've sort of like been there at the start, and now you've sort of like got to that age now where more Star Wars is coming out, and you're one of the older fans in relation
Yeah,
to like people from the sequels. So how important do you think the older generation of fans are to the franchise?
I think they are the epitome of Star Wars fans because they are the generation, say maybe at my age now or a little bit younger, where they experienced it for the first time. But I think that they're the Matt Snouts. They are the ones who are the one with the torch leading it higher. They are the generation who kicked it off for fans like myself who got into it. And I I love them because I've got a friend at work who's from the era of the original trilogy, and he was telling me aspects of obviously how it was back then, certain things being released, and just thinking it must have been such a thrill to be alive, especially the social media aspect of it not being around. Thinking, oh, you'd have to wait a few more years. Oh,
Yeah,
Darth Vader is Luke's father. That was unreal. Whereas if it was on social media now, it'd been released immediately. Was back then you
yeah,
had to wait,
yeah.
and it was such
Yeah.
a thrill to be alive in that presence. But I think they're the epitome of Star Wars fans because they're the ones who've been there, done it, bought the t-shirt, know their experience, and you can learn a lot from them. As I said, they are the epitome, and you could argue they are. I mean,
But
for me,
on
some
the
of the
flip
Star Wars
side, I mean,
generations, they are my Obi-Wan. You go to them for guidance. Oh, they are.
oh,
They've been there, done it.
wow, that is yeah, I like that. I
Do you
like that.
see
I'll
what I
take
mean?
that.
They're like you're
No,
like
I
my
do. I absolutely
Obi-Wan.
do.
It's just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But I mean, on the flip side of that, do you think it's because the original trilogy, the bar was set so high for us, for me, and my generation that we were lucky enough to be there? That because the bar was set so high, everything else hasn't quite hit that note, and it's fans' expectation that are sort of like too high.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Star Wars franchise as a whole, it is one of the best and sort of high expectation franchises out there. Marvel, DC, you could argue there's elements of that, but Star Wars just hits the
Yeah,
ball where it needs to be struck. It's out there. But I do think sometimes if you do get ahead of yourself, you sort of lead yourself to disappointment. But I just feel that if you go there with a particular standard where you maybe think about it in that aspect of thinking, oh, it's going to be great, you may be disappointed. But I just feel that if you can go into anything with just a clear mind, not
yeah,
think about anything,
yeah.
you can either be left go, that was awesome, or they could have done that a little bit better. But I think if you just clear your mind and just keep an open mind, you,
Yeah,
you make up your own mind. Basically, that's how I see
yeah,
it
yeah,
from my
absolutely,
personal perspective. But I
absolutely.
can understand people getting high expectations as such. But
Yeah.
that's just the way some
Yeah, I
people
mean,
are.
the expectation of the bar was set very high, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
How important are strong female characters within the Star Wars universe?
I think they are immensely important. I mean, Carrie Fisher. I mean, the young Carrie Fisher at that time. she hit the ball running in terms of setting out ladies' roles. I mean, I think they're vastly important because they set the standard in terms of giving young actresses and maybe older actresses new roles and everything. But I just think they are the epitome of it, because you need to have strong female characters and you need to have strong male characters and everything, because there needs to be that connection, there needs to be that spine, or that story needs to be told in the particular manner they want it to be told. But I just think they are so important because, let's face it, obviously I'm not from the particular generation, but women, ladies as well, they've come a long way in recent years in terms of obviously what they've had to suffer and everything. But to see them in lead roles and everything, I couldn't be more happy for them, whether they be, like I said, male or female. It doesn't really bother me. But I think the female aspect is huge, because let's face it, we look back at 77, Carrie Fisher, considering how young she was, she just absolutely blitzed that role. And then
you forget, don't you? That's the thing.
Generation,
you forget.
She's superb. And like I said, Daisy Ridley took up that mantle, and I don't think she did a bad job. But yes, there was criticism and everything, but they done their part. Felicity Jones as Jyn Erso. I think they're cool, interesting characters. They're cool. You need to have female characters for certain stories to develop, because if they're not there, then your story falls flat.
I mean, even the films you grew up with, the prequels. You know, you've got Queen Amidala. I mean, Natalie Portman, was she 18, 19 at the time? So she was roughly the same age as Carrie Fisher was. So, you know, she kind of carried herself and did really well. So yeah, I mean, strong female characters have always been part of Star Wars. I mean, you can go recently as like Ahsoka Tano, Bo-Katan, Fennec Shand, Cara Dune, another one. You know, all strong female characters. And the thing is with those characters as well, they've all been written really well. Even Jyn Erso and Rey, I feel sorry for, again, Daisy Ridley. I just do not feel that her character was written that great. I don't think there was that much character development, because she seemed to know everything. That's not her fault. That's what she's got written in front of her. That's what she's got to go with. I just feel that if she'd have been written better, it's the same with Poe, it's the same with Finn. They could have been absolute awesome characters. I feel it's such a shame. I really do. But there you go. How important is it for Star Wars to be inclusive?
I think in terms of inclusive, I think it can be inclusive as such. You're not going to please everyone, which is understandable. I get that, but I think it has the right to be inclusive, because obviously it's nice to involve everyone from different backgrounds and different parts of the world and everything. But the thing, my personal opinion, and maybe other people, I think the thing that sometimes annoys me is when it's sort of rammed down your throat, forced upon you. You must do this. It's just like, I can understand you've got to reach a certain audience, but when it's forced upon, some people don't like it. Whereas I think if it's set up at a particular capacity where we can go from stage A to B to C to D, that's fine. But I think maybe when it's just forced upon, when it's not really needed, that's what gets people the ump, and that's sort of what gives me to think, oh, why is that really forced upon when it wasn't necessary? But I think if it's done in a respectful manner where everyone's involved, regardless of walks of life and everything, it's fine. But I think when it's forced upon and change that's not necessarily needed, that's where some people get the ump, which that's how I see it. But that's just my particular opinion.
Do you feel Star Wars was ever broken?
No, I don't think Star Wars was broken. There's been aspects of it where it was in a dark place in terms of the sequel trilogy, in terms of character development and stuff, but I never thought for one bit Star Wars is broken. No, I think.
Do you think it needs to be changed then? I mean, because I think for me, and I think a lot of people as well, Star Wars is its own entity. It doesn't need to follow in the footsteps of Marvel. Marvel is its own entity, where you've got all these films that make this Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't feel Star Wars needs that. I think Star Wars works well with just being the films that it is and telling the story it's telling. It doesn't need to be all crammed together into this big universe like they're doing with Marvel. I don't think Star Wars needs to follow anybody. So
no, I don't think it does.
No.
No, I think it should just be kept the way it is in terms of how they've done it in recent years. A prime example is the Clone Wars era. The series, what they released there, it was sort of left alone its own particular pathway, and it turned out to be one of the best TV shows of my childhood. Say early stage of adulthood, it was just left alone, saying, "Go on, off you go. Story's done." Just certain stuff is all right when it's left alone, and I completely agree with that. What some people don't agree with is obviously me being English and everything. Certain British television shows, it's fine the way it is, but don't change it. Leave it how it is. And I think that's with
Yeah.
Star Wars. Just leave it how it is. It's done. You're going to be all right, because sometimes when you get changes like that, you're basically flogging the dead horse, and then you look back
Yeah.
and going, "We should have never really done that in the first place." Just leave it alone. It's fine as it is.
Yeah.
There may be stuff for improvement, but it's
Yeah, I mean,
leave it alone.
there's always
Star
room
Wars
for
is Star
improvement.
Wars.
Always, always room for improvement. But
Yeah.
So I don't. So there was an episode where a guy, Salacious Rum, he was on one of the episodes, and he said that Star Wars is a mixture of all these different formulas that come together as ingredients to make Star Wars. And I think it's fundamental to keep to those ingredients, because that's what makes Star Wars, you know. And so I think he hit the nail on the head. We've just gone past the hour, so I've got one more question for you, Jack. Overall,
Sure.
what makes Star Wars great?
I think the fundamental thing that makes Star Wars great is the storytelling and the people coming together. I think that it's completely clear and obvious why Star Wars is massive and getting bigger nearly every day, is because of the storytelling and the people that it brings together. It just sets the bar so high. You could be on the other part of the world, or you could be where we are now, and you could say out of nowhere, meet up out of the blue. You could say, "Oh, Star Wars," if you've got a particular T-shirt on or particular memorabilia. It just sets the benchmark so high, and I think it's just the generosity and the love, because it just brings so many people together in different walks of life and everything, and it's such a relatable topic, because it just, whether it be the figures, the films, merchandise, anything, it sets such a high standard for others to follow, and it's just being adored year in, year out, more generations coming through, and it's just such a wonderful thing to be a part of. It hits it where it needs to be hit, and if Star Wars keeps doing it, then they are going to continue bringing in more generations again and again, and then you can explain, "Oh, my era was this, my era is that." It's the beauty of just bringing people together, which is the best thing I love about it. And you could be from the original trilogy or the prequel era, but you can come together and discuss what makes your Star Wars perfect. And I think that's the best thing about it, really.
Yeah, well said. I agree with everything you said there. Yeah, absolutely. On that note, we'll leave it on a good note. So that was it. That's the end of the chat, mate. And I've got to say, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Again, an hour.
Thank you, mate.
Never
Very kind.
seems enough. No. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Like I say, an hour never seems enough. Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on YouTube as Jedi Master 98. I have a different username on Instagram, but if you go to my channel info, you'll be able to see it there. I have a Facebook account, and there's other areas where you can find me as well. But that's what you can find me. If you want to get involved, you can be sure to either message me on Instagram or Facebook, talk about Star Wars. Love to talk about Star Wars, and that's where you can find me, to have a good old chat and a chinwag.
Well, what I'll do is I will leave the link to your YouTube channel in the description below. For those of you who have stayed to the end and watched, thank you very much, whether you're actually physically watching or just listening, potting around in the kitchen, doing whatever. Thank you so much. This has been Jack, Jedi Master 98. It's been an absolute privilege and a pleasure to have you on the channel, mate. Thank you very much. And for those of you who are regulars to the channel, thank you so much. If you are new to the channel, remember, this is just our opinion. So please, you know, I said it the last couple of weeks, don't get butthurt if there's something that you do not agree with. It's all good. Be respectful. It's all about opinions. Doesn't make us right or wrong. Anyhow, that's it for this episode. Take care, stay safe, and we shall see you in the next one. Bye for now.
Thank you very much for having me, mate. Cheers.